Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're dialing in from. Thank you very much for joining today's Wednesday webinar. I'll just get myself sorted out. There we go. And then I can see you over there, and then I get the chat up, and then I'll get the Q&A up. Little bit of logistics. Here we go. Okay. And present showtime. Welcome. If this is the first Kowalah Wednesday webinar that you have joined, welcome, firstly. We get together at this time every Wednesday just to give a space where we can talk about something that is top of mind for us, top of mind for our clients, things that are going on in the world of AI. There is just so much going on that this gives us a place where we can just take a little bit of a breather and then walk through what we're hearing and hopefully give you some value that you can then translate back into your own businesses and their own teams and workflows that you're working on. We will go through our normal sort of three-step process. So I'm going to kick off talking about the main topic of the day, and that is a thing called managed agents that I'm going to come on to in a minute. And we'll probably spend maybe 30 minutes talking about this as we go through some demos. I'm going to show you some stuff that's working for us. Then we've got a little section called AI in the news. Like I say, there are so many releases and updates coming out. And so we scour the news and then give you what we think are the two or three top things that you should be aware of for your own businesses. And then we've got a Q&A section. Now, you're very welcome, obviously, to ask any questions about the topics that I'm covering. But more than that, this is a place where you can ask whatever you want. How should I write this prompt? What's a skill? What we hope is that over time, these Wednesday webinars become a place where you know that you have got an hour a week that you can drop in, get any question asked and answered. Do feel free to ask those questions as we go through the session as well. You don't need to wait until we get to the end before you ask your burning question. You're in a Zoom meeting or a Zoom webinar. So you've got two ways of getting in contact with me. One is there's a chat widget that you'll see in the Zoom bar at the top or bottom of your screen, depending on what device you're on. And you can chat and you can share that with everyone, with Caitlin on my team or with myself. And then there's a sort of more formal Q&A bar where you can ask your question and Caitlin will moderate that. For the avoidance of doubt, Caitlin is a human being and you can see her on the screen. And so she will help if I don't immediately see that you've got a question there. So with that, let's get into our main topic of today, which is a thing called Claude Managed Agents. And what I'm hoping through this is that I'll help you to start to think about what managed agents could mean in the context of your company, of your team, of your own work. And whilst some of this is going to be fairly technical, what I hope is that I'll do it in a way that you won't feel excluded. Explicitly, this session is not for someone technical. I'm not going to talk about like how do you code these things up. What I really want you to come away from this with is thinking about, okay, I'm a chief operating officer, I'm a chief financial officer, I'm head of people. And now I'm starting to think about what's possible with one of these managed agents, how we might integrate it into our company. And then you can trot along to go and speak to your friendly IT representative, or you may choose to speak to Kowalah, and then we can help you to build that kind of thing out. But this is really about ideas and helping you to expand your thinking of what is possible. And on that note, I say this a lot to clients. I've learned more in the last 2 weeks than I learned in the previous 2 years. And I say that phrase like every 2 weeks as it goes on. I have learned more in the last 2 weeks than I did in the last 2 years. And it really comes from playing and experimenting with these new tools and expanding my own belief in what is possible. And hopefully that's some of what I'm going to show you today. So this came out. I'm just seeing if there was a date on this screenshot. Oh, yeah, there is. April the 9th, and we're on April the 22nd at the moment. So we're really talking about 2 weeks ago, Anthropic launched managed agents. And up until this point, building an agent that your team could use and interact with was a bit of a tricky challenge. We were running a couple of them. Some of you may have met Carolina, our AI project manager that we've been working with for about 6 months now. And Carolina has been running on the Anthropic platform, but it was using a thing called the Claude Agent SDK, and it was running in a sandbox from a company called Vercel. It was all a bit you needed to know what you were doing in order to build this thing, and then to manage and debug what Carolina was doing was a little bit tricky. What Anthropic has attempted to do, and I think been very successful in doing, is simplifying that and making the process of building an agent, of managing multiple agents, and then debugging and keeping an eye on what they're doing have made that much simpler. So I'm going to show you this platform in a minute. But before I do that, I'm actually going to go on to this next slide, and then I'll come back to showing you the platform just to explain what a managed agent is in the context of Anthropic. So there's really four concepts that you want to get your head around. So the one is the agent. What is an agent? And I'll give you an example that I'm going to show you is Brian, the account executive. So Brian is one of our agents, and I have to say he helps me out a lot. I'm spending a lot of time chatting to Brian. Brian has got a role. I'll show you a bit of what his role is in a moment. He's got a system prompt, which is basically his instructions, his job description. Brian has got access to a number of skills that shows Brian like how to do various things like updating HubSpot or doing a forecast. And Brian has got access to a set of tools such as Gmail, such as Google Chat, such as his own Google Drive folders, such as HubSpot, such as Granola for call transcription. So this is the agent. This is the persona, the role, the person that we're building. The second concept is an environment. And so I talked to our team about the environment being like the block of flats. This is the block of flats that Brian lives in. And in his environment is a sort of virtualized container, a sort of computer environment, which has got access to certain things. So there are certain packages and plugins and libraries that allow Brian to work and to do various things, such as running code and calling on his tools. So the environment is an important thing for you to set up for your organization. Then within that environment runs one or more sessions. So a session you can think of as a conversation. So I might have 3 or 4 sessions with Brian each day, and each of those sessions is a conversation. I might be having an email conversation with him. That would be one session. I might be G-chatting with him. That's another session. He may kick off his own session because at 7:30 every morning he needs to do his forecast. And so these are these multiple instances of a conversation with an agent. And what's important to think about is that we can load files into a session. So when I know that I'm asking Brian about a certain account, I can provide him with loads of details about that account up front, so he's got access to those in his session. And then the fourth concept to get your head around is that of an event. So we've got Brian, the agent. Brian is living in his environment. And in that environment, we've got one or more different sessions where I'm having a conversation with Brian. And the events are really the messages that are coming in or out of that session. So that might be me sending an email to Brian. It might be sending a Slack message to Brian. It could be Brian kicking off a message out because he's got this autonomous, I need to message Charlie at 7:30 every morning with an update. So that could be an event coming out. And also, there could be other systems that are triggering these events. So, for example, when a deal changes forecast category in HubSpot, that could trigger an event that gets Brian to go and do something, for example. So these are the four things to think about: agents, environments, sessions, and events. So now let me switch over to the platform. And if you are a Claude user today, maybe you've got a personal Claude account. Maybe your company has given you a Claude account. And maybe you go logging in to Claude.ai. Let me go to my Claude over here. Or maybe you're in Claude Cowork. So this, you're familiar with Claude as an interface. Everything that we're going to look at now for managed agents is completely separate to this, and you can't access it from this at all. So this is the Claude interface as a user. And then you need a Claude Platform account. So look up the top here, platform.claude.com. And this is where you access the development environment. It's where you would access the Claude API directly. And so if you are not a developer and you're not in your IT team, then you might want to go and have a chat with your IT team, and you'd ask them the question, hey guys and girls, do we have a Claude Platform account? Do we have a developer environment where we can manage agents? And they may have one, they may have not, in which case you want to set one up separately, and you're going to load it up with something like $50 or something, and then you're able to start work. But just be aware that this is very different to the user interface that you're going into for having your chats. Once you're in your Claude platform, then you're going to see this managed agents on the left-hand side. And I talked to you earlier about agents, sessions, environments, and we don't have events in here because they're the things that happen, but we'll look at those in a minute. Now, you've got this quick start here. If you haven't got any ideas of what you want to build, then the quick start can start to help you on that. So you'll see things here like, oh, I've got a support agent, or I've got an incident commander, I've got a data analyst. Now, I have to say, when I was first getting into this, I looked at these sort of quick starts and I was like, I don't think any of those are anywhere near what I'm trying to do. And actually, had I gone down some of those routes, I probably would have been less capable than if I was just trying to figure it out myself. So what I would suggest, and we ran this on a webinar, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, where I built Joshua, the solution architect, where I used a skill called Agent Builder. And I used the Agent Builder skill in my normal Claude to help me define what an agent is, what I want it to do, what systems it should have access to. So I'm not going to go through that again, but in the show notes, we'll share a link to that recording because that's how you get to this point. So if we think about Brian as this account executive, we almost already want to have thought about what Brian's going to do and his roles and responsibilities before we get to this point. But having done that, if you haven't got that, you might have a chat here explaining that you want to build Brian. But let me just show you a bit of what we've got in here. So we're currently in the process of moving all of our agents into the Claude Managed Agents environment. So we've moved 4 in here. Carolina's not moved across yet. We've got another 8 that we're in the process of moving over. But I think you'll find once you've moved one, it's very, very easy to get them all built up. So let's have a look at Brian. What is Brian? Brian is this agent. He's got this ID that Claude provides, and this makes it easy for us to contact Brian. Brian is using at the moment Sonnet 4.6. Get ready for AI in the news because that should be updated to Opus 4.7 shortly. But here's the system prompt. You are Brian, Charlie's tactical sales wingman. Who you are, your core principle, what you do autonomously, updating HubSpot, what you don't do, how you communicate via Google Chat. All of this comes out of the agent builder definition that we described a couple of weeks ago. So this is really the instructions that describes what Brian needs to do. So if I keep scrolling down a little bit, what you're also going to see is that Brian has got access to a number of tools. So he's got built-in tools, and these come with the Managed Agents platform. So he can run commands in his session, in the environment that he's in, these sort of code commands. He can read documents, he can write documents, edit, he can do some web search. So Brian's got access to a number of these tools. And then he's also got access to a thing that we've created called the Kowalah Agent MCP server. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. But what this MCP server allows Brian to do is to access our HubSpot, Granola, call transcripts, his own Google Drive, his own calendar, his own Gmail, and things like that. So these are the tools that I was talking about. And then finally, Brian's got access to 3 skills. So you can think of this as his standard operating procedure, and I'm going to show you what's in these skills in a minute. But this is an agent. We talked about the first concept. An agent, it's got a system prompt, it's got access to tools, and it's got access to skills which teach Brian how to work. So, and I think if I go here with the edit, you can just actually start to edit this stuff directly. So it is just text. So once you've defined that agent, it's pretty easy to update. So that's an agent. Then we talked about this the concept of sessions. So here are different sessions that I'm having with Brian. I'm not going to click into individual ones because Brian is live and I chat to Brian about our clients, and Brian updates our forecast and all of these kind of things. But within each of these chats is Brian running, basically. Brian doing some stuff, having a conversation with me in Google Chat, and doing the work that I want Brian to do. And then we've got environments. Now, I've just got one environment for all of our agents. But what you do in an environment is you define what networking is available. So I've allowed our agents to be able to access the outside internet. I want them to be able to go and access other systems and tools that we are using. But you could restrict that to a certain set. So I think if I go here, you can say, I want it to be limited. And you could say, right, Brian can only go to these certain websites. So that could be locked down, and you can provide a bit of restriction there. One of the reasons specifically why I want Brian to be able to go anywhere is that Brian helps me prepare for client meetings. And one of the things that's in his skill to help me prepare for client meetings is go and research the competitors of our potential customer and understand a bit more about the industry. And so I don't want to restrict where he is going. Now, obviously, for different organizations, you're going to have different sets of security and compliance and governance, and just have this confidence that you can put these limits around where Brian or your own version of Brian is able to go to. Okay, let me just go back to my slides here. So we've talked about agents, the different agents we've got. We talked about the environment and some of the security and governance around that. We've talked about the sessions, which are individual iterations of those conversations, and the messages in and out. And so you might be thinking, well, okay, Charlie, I'm trying to get my head around this. So how do we actually engage with Brian now that he's living in the Anthropic platform? Well, I tried to make this simple image to show you how we've structured this. So I'm going to start in the middle, actually. What we were looking at there was the Anthropic Managed Agent platform. Agents, one or more of them, environments, one or more of them, sessions, and events. So everything that's happening here is in the Kowalah, in the Anthropic platform. That was their managed agent. But now you need some way of communicating with your managed agent. And for us, we use a platform called Vercel. Vercel is a cloud hosting platform. You may come across something like Cloudflare, which would be similar. You may be using Azure. You may be building things on Google Cloud Platform. You may be building things on AWS. It is a place where you are hosting your applications, and it may be where you're dealing with authentication and things like that. Now, what do we have in the Vercel project that we don't have in the Anthropic Managed Agent? Well, we need a way of communicating with our agents and getting messages in and out. And so we have a Next.js project. So Next.js is the framework that Vercel came up with. It's a way of having a code project running up in the internet. They handle all of the hosting and so on. Within that project, I've got three things that are super useful for our agents. So the first is webhooks. So when I email brian@kowalah.com, I want something to happen. So how does that email get into the Anthropic platform? When I Gchat, because we use Google, so when I Gchat Brian, I want that to get to the project. So how does that happen? So there's this kind of communication layer that the project handles. Next one is scheduling. So I want Brian to do something at 7:30 every morning. And so the Vercel project handles that. It's called a cron job, but it runs at 7:30 every morning and it does something on that schedule. Now, I've got no doubt that scheduling will arrive in managed agents because they've already got it in a number of other parts of their platform. So the scheduling may well move into the Anthropic bucket fairly soon. And then the final thing that the Vercel project does at the moment is the file system. So I talked about the environments and the sessions earlier. And I said that the agent is able to work on its own file system that it gets created in that session. Now, it can start with a blank file system and it can start to create files as it goes. But if, for example, I'm going to be asking Brian about a specific client maybe that we're working on, and maybe we've already got a project in the Kowalah platform and we've got all of this information. Well, why not give that all to Brian up front instead of making him go and hunt for it later on? So this ability to load the managed agent up with a file system up front is really important, and the Vercel project helps us with that. So as we were starting on the left, we've got all the different channels coming in. We then, that then triggers this Vercel project to do various things, choose what to do. And then that spins up a session of the Anthropic Managed Agent, loads in the files, loads in the messaging from the email or the Google chat or the Slack message. Maybe it does some other bits and pieces depending on attachments. And then Brian can do his work. And then what happens is that Brian's decision may be, well, I was sent a Gchat. I was asked about a specific client or a project or a job description, whatever it might be, depending on the agent. And Brian may need to go and get more information. And this is where the Kowalah Agent MCP comes in. So this is a special server. It's another application that runs on Vercel as well. And it is MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. And what that means is how do we give models, as in Anthropic, how do we give it access to other information from other systems so that the agent can do its job? Now, thinking about Brian as one of these agents, he's my AE co-pilot, my account executive co-worker and colleague. So he needs access to things like our CRM system, which is HubSpot. He needs access to the Kowalah platform where we manage all of our client projects. He might need access to our accounting system. He might need access to different comms, such as Gmail, Google Drive, Slack, whatever these types of things are. And it's the MCP server, which are these tools that gives Brian access to. And the agent is able to pick and choose what tool to use, when, and what to send to those tools, much in the same way that a human would work. So as a human, we communicate to that human by sending them an email, we send them a Slack message, we send them a G chat. They then decide what to do and they pick and choose what tools to use on the right-hand side. And this is very much what these agents are able to do. So we've talked about a managed agent. We've talked about different ways that you could communicate with that agent. Why would you even have an agent? And let's think about this in the context of you. Maybe you've got products that you're selling to your customers. Maybe you've got a platform. How are we thinking about this at Kowalah and what we're building? So, yes, we are at our heart a services business. We are helping our customers to drive AI adoption across their whole organization. We're running change programs, we're building things. A key part of how we deliver that service to our clients is through the Kowalah platform. So if you're a client of Kowalah, maybe you've been in the Kowalah platform. This is basically over on the left-hand side here. We've got a web you've got a web browser, you log into the Kowalah platform, you can track your projects and so on. And all of that is building off data that is in the Kowalah database at the back end. So far, so good. This is basically SaaS, as you would know, software as a service. What we've got now, though, that we've got these managed agents, is that we built this Kowalah Agent MCP that I talked about. So these are all the different tools that our agents can access. And then over the top of that, we've now built the Kowalah Agent Hub, which I'm going to show you in a minute. So how do we then visualize all of these agents, the Brians, the Johns, the Deirdres, the Joshuas? And then now our individual teams and our customers can now communicate with these agents via any channel that they want. And our goal here is that we want to go and meet our clients where they are working. So if you imagine we're working with a client that might have 1,000 employees, 1,000 employees are not going to be logging into the Kowalah platform. No one wants to go and log into another SaaS platform anymore. It's just not the way that people want to work. They're going to work in Claude, maybe ChatGPT. They're going to work in email, and maybe one other system they might log into. More commonly now, they want to engage with these other systems where they're already working. And for our clients, that often means they're in teams. So it's a finance team that are in a Teams channel talking about budgeting or talking about closing the books. It's an HR team who are talking about new job roles that need to be created. It's an operations team that are talking about a new process. And it is there that we want to meet them when someone says, can you help? How do I build a skill? Have we built something like this in our company already? And this is where the agents come in by being able to meet those people at the point where they are doing that work. Also, just a short ad break on the right-hand side, we've also built a separate MCP server that you can plug directly into Claude. So if you are a client of Kowalah and you've got a Claude account, then you can now plug in directly and you can ask all about the project and the expert requests that we're working on directly from within Claude. So hopefully that gives you some ideas of like why you might do this and building agents either for your own employees or for your customers and prospects. So then the next thing that I wanted to just show you as we wrap up talking about managed agents was the agent hub that we have built. So what I showed you there with the managed agents interface here, where do I want to go? Leave here, actually. I want to go leave. Yeah. So this is more for developers. This is the technical aspect. This is where we're building the thing and we're using Claude Code to program and to build these things. But the rest of the Kowalah team is not going to come in here. I don't want them to come in here and have a look at what Joshua does. So we built this very simple agent hub, which sits in that Vercel project that I talked about. This is part of that Vercel project, the agent hub. And in here, we can see what Brian, John, Deirdre, Joshua, and all of the other agents as we build them in can do. So here we've got Brian. Brian is an Anthropic managed agent. These are the channels that we can communicate with him via Google Chat, via Gmail. Here is his system prompt. You're Brian, Charlie's tactical sales wingman. Lovely. These are the skills that Brian has got access to. So I talked about him doing his daily deal sweep skill earlier. So here is the exact description of what Brian does for his daily deal sweep. Scanning HubSpot, scanning Granola, scanning each deal's recent emails, scanning Brian's own Gmail inbox, merging and analyzing, and then doing all of these bits and pieces. So this is really useful for the non-technical people in our team to be able to figure out what Brian does and then give us feedback of like, can Brian do this? Can Brian do that? Can we tweak him? So this is our agent hub, very much a work in progress as we build this out, but we're really thinking of this like our kind of alternative org chart. And I would expect us to have 20, 30, 40, 50 of these as we go in the coming months. Just before I come off this, just for the avoidance of doubt, these agents, I set them up in Google Workspace. So they have their own email address. Now, this is how we communicate with them. I email brian@kowalah.com. I GChat Brian in our Google Workspace. They have their own Google Drives. They create their own folders and files and trackers in these Google Drives. Is how they maintain their memory. And I would say, as I work more and more with these managed agents, my understanding, or how should I phrase this? My belief in how much an agent can do compared to a human, the gap is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, because everything that I want Brian, the AE, to do, I'm pretty much getting digital Brian to do. So my current thinking and my guidance to clients is, unless what this role entails is one human physically in front of another human, and so by this I'm thinking of having lunch, running a workshop, putting post-it notes up on a flip chart, playing golf if that's what you do with your clients. Unless it's doing those kinds of things, I think this role is up for grabs for being agentified. So there's a lesson in that in terms of thinking about how you structure your org chart. If we don't need human-to-human contact, there's potential that this becomes a managed agent. But if you are a manager, an individual contributor, I'd be thinking about how do I make sure that my role involves physical human contact? Because if it doesn't, I'm up for being Brianified moving forwards. So there we go with managed agents. Hopefully that gave you some inspiration, some ideas, didn't freak you out too much. Like I say, I've learned more in the last 2 weeks than I have in the last 2 years. I've only been building these for the last 2 weeks, but the potential of them is absolutely huge. I can't wait to see where it goes. Now onto AI in the news. And as I say, if you've got any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. Happy to help with those. Um, Last Friday, okay, this goes back to my I've learned more in the last 2 weeks than I have in the last 2 years. Last Friday, Anthropic dropped a thing called Claude Design, and I'm going to do a webinar, Wednesday webinar on this in about 3 weeks because we've already got the next two booked up. But let me just give you a sneak peek of Claude Design because it's so exciting. I hadn't really planned to do this, but let's go. Claude Design. What Claude Design is a new way of designing slides, user interfaces, applications, wireframes, prototypes. You might have been playing around with things like Lovable. You might have been playing around with things like Replit or Bolt or V0. This is on along those lines, but it's really got what's called a design system right at the heart of it. And let me just show you what I was building at the weekend with Claude Design until I smashed all of my tokens and I was in enforced stopping. So what a design system is, if you're not a designer, is really it codifies your look and feel, your brand, the way that things should work. And it means that everything else that you go and create off that design system follows that. So let me go in this tab. This is the design system that I built at the weekend based off Kowalah, of the application. So I plugged Claude Design into our existing project. So I didn't need to tell it. I just said, look, here's the website, here's the Kowalah platform. Can you extract all of this stuff? And then it's built out this design system, which includes these tokens, which are a key part of a design system. So here's all our color scheme. So far, so good. Here's all our typography and when to use it. So far, so good. Here are different components for the website or for the Kowalah platform. So a key feature of the Kowalah platform is Kanban boards. And so Claude Design built out all of our designs for Kanban boards, what they should look like, each of the cards, all of the different states of each card as you move it around. And as you can imagine, I was sat here on Saturday morning going, holy moly, I cannot believe what's happening in front of me. We looked at things like all of the page headers, everything, how this should look like in the application. So far, so good. Then it creates these UI kits. And so you can think of a UI kit as being a consolidation of a number of those components. So it's built me a UI kit for the website. So this is what the homepage should look like. And Claude Design built all of this. This is what our homepage could look like. Having had a discussion with me, this is how we're going to reference these things. It built out what our pricing pages might look like. Now, the key thing here is this is not about the content. This is not about the actual words. It's the design system that is going into this. There's a question here. Is the design system building on what you already do or just identifying and pulling out the existing themes? It was a really cool process. So if I go back to, let me go, where's my Claude Design? Go back here. And if I go to my, okay, the design system chat here, for example, I won't go back to the start of it, but what I did was I connected it up to our GitHub, and our GitHub includes, yes, the Kowalah platform, but also the Koala website is a project in GitHub as well. So I plugged it in to both of those and I said, look, here's where we are today. Go and explore it. So find the Kanban boards, find the webinar pages, find the AI chat sidebar. So it could go and see exactly what was there. And because it's all code, it knows exactly the color systems and so on. I already had in the website a visual style document that I'd built previously for Claude Code. So it kind of knew FA26AO was our key theme color. It kind of knew what the fonts were and a bit of our language. So a lot of it was just feeding it as much stuff as I had already. If you've already got designs in Figma, you could pull those in. If you already had documents or folders on your laptop, you could put those in. But I basically fed it as much context as I had. And then I said, can you make this loads better? And so then it started interviewing me about like what brands do I like aspire to and what kind of theme do we want and tell me a little bit about the logo and how do you have this koala icon and what is it that you want to convey? And I really felt like I was chatting with a design agency. And it was through that that we got to this point of having this amazing, I mean, I think amazing design system that now guides everything that we want to do. So, okay, well, that looks quite cool. I have a feeling we're doing the webinar in 3 weeks right now, but I think this is the coolest thing that I've seen. So I want to touch on it. Um, so having done that design system, then on Monday, I wanted to build the Agent Hub because I knew we were doing this webinar. I'd already built out all of the agents in the Claude platform, but I wanted to build the Agent Hub. And so what you can do once you've got your design system, if I go back a couple, so I was in the design system, then it's like, what do you do with that design system? And so you go to share, and here you could send that to Canva if you were building slides. But what I was doing was building in code. So I literally went hand off to Claude Code and I copied this command, fetch this design file, read its README, and implement the relevant aspects of the design. And it's got this link. And then I went to our Vercel project where we had the Claude, the Claude Managed Agents, and I literally copied that in and said, "Build me an agent hub." With a few more things, but following this design system, and it built it like this. And I was like, holy moly, everything that is in that design system, the fonts, the pink icons, the way that the cards are built, the background color, all came immediately from that design system, from me copying that command across. I didn't need to tell the Vercel project or Claude Code anything. It just pulled it in automatically. And so now we're just rolling this out across the whole Koala platform, and it will mean that we've got consistent styles across the website, across the application, and everything else that we're doing on social. So that came out on Friday. That was pretty cool. So definitely have a play with that. If you have got a Claude Played account, then it's a bit hard to find. Is it hard to find? It's not through the main Claude. You just go claude.ai/design and then you can get cracking. And just be aware that it uses its own set of tokens and limits. So it's separate to your chat. But if you're having a good go at it, you'll probably hit that limit. And I've run out of tokens till Friday, so I'm like hands off until Friday. Um, so that was a cool update for you to have a play with. What was next? Opus 4.7. So I touched on this earlier. Up until last week, Opus 4.6 was the top model, and Opus 4.7 has come out. And if I go, let's go over here, Opus 4.7 launch. See if I've got where's my Anthropic news. Go there. Don't know why my Wi-Fi is not working anymore. Let me double check. Okay, well, I'm assuming, Caitlin, you can still hear me. I'll put thumbs up.
Yep,
Maybe
all good,
not.
Charlie.
Oh, you can still hear me. Okay, cool. Maybe there's just something going wrong with my browser, not going to Google there. Um, okay. Oh, here we go. Introducing Opus 4.7. This is what I wanted to find anyway. Um, benchmarks, benchmarks, benchmarks. The new numbers are bigger than the old numbers. That's all you need to know with these benchmarks. The new models come out and they are better than the one that was before. That's all you really need to know. Opus 4.7 is right up at the forefront. What I would add in, if that you are playing around with Opus 4.7 benchmarks, benchmarks, lovely benchmarks, is, I don't know if we've got it here, if I can just find it here, Opus 4.7 prompting guide. Um, da, 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 prompting best practices. We'll share this in the notes as well. If you are using Opus 4.7 and you're using it for any kind of development, there are some nuances to how you work well with Opus 4.7 compared to 4.6. You know, it's better at following instructions. It needs a little bit more of this. It needs a little bit less of that. So rather than just blindly flipping from 4.6 to 4.7, I would read this document, ask Claude, what should we do different? And then you might just fine tune a little bit of your system prompts or your agents or whatever with using 4.7. And then yes, third thing to update was a release from ChatGPT. Now, I have to say, I have not played with this. This only came out last night. And let me go ChatGPT. Okay, maybe it's because I went on that browser. Let me go here. Okay, yeah. ChatGPT, images 2.0 launch. So this came out last night, and it is a new kind of world-class image generating platform. So I'm sure your social feeds will be filled with cool new images over the next few weeks as people come up with new use cases of this. Now I mentioned there, like, I don't really log into ChatGPT anymore. A year ago, we were doing a lot of ChatGPT projects, rolling out ChatGPT Enterprise. But the reality is now it's Anthropic projects is where we're doing most of the work because they're so focused on enterprise use cases. And actually, the image launch from ChatGPT just reinforces what I'm thinking. This is aiming at consumers, not at businesses. You see this kind of buzz when these image generation tools come out, whether that was Nano Banana from Google or other tools that come out. But after a couple of weeks, you don't see anything. It disappears because it's not really a core business use case at scale across 1,000, 5,000 employees for generating images. And most of these examples that you're seeing here, this is consumer. This is what OpenAI appears to be sort of aiming for, rather than overly focusing on spreadsheets and documents and things like that. I don't speak to people at OpenAI. I can't say that, but just the fact of what's being released on the one hand is this, and on the Anthropic side is the managed agents. I just feel it's a little bit of a different of direction there. But if you're a ChatGPT user, go and check it out. Images 2.0 and have a play. I'd be interested to see what you build. The next one on AI in the news was Gemini last week announced that you can now interact with Gemini on a Mac. I should say Google announced this for their Gemini app. Now, why I think this is interesting from a business perspective, many of you may be Google Workspace customers. Many of you may have Gemini because it's free, basically part of your account. And you may be thinking, I should be using more Gemini. And uh, that's a very valid approach to explore that. One of the reasons why I think Gemini coming onto a Mac is interesting is what is Google? Google is the web company. They were the leaders in web. Chrome. How do we get more people onto the web? Get off, desktop applications. Let's move everything into the browser, and then through Android, doing the same thing on mobile. Um, but what they've recognized is the same as ChatGPT, the same as Anthropic, is that agents work really, really well when you give them access to what is going on your laptop. If you want to write great code, if you want to build long-running tasks, if you want agents to be able to really do great work, they need access to a file system on your laptop. And I think this is just an interesting direction that we're heading in with Gemini. Um, so I don't see any other questions. Do feel free to ask any questions in the next couple of minutes. I'm just going to introduce a couple of upcoming webinars that I want to talk about. So firstly, just next week, you might be forgiven for saying, well, every time I come on a Wednesday webinar with Charlie, and it's all good news, good news, good news, new toys to go and play with. But there are risks, very real risks. And especially when we're having conversations with our larger enterprise customers, they may be very well embedded into the Microsoft ecosystem. They may have sort of governance and compliance restrictions that mean that data needs to be in certain places and access needs to be limited. We are very aware of that situation, and I'm just recognizing that the date is different on this. But don't worry, this is next week, not in February. So this will be April the 29th, so 1 week from now. And so what I'm going to talk through next week are the sort of the very real and important to be understood potential risks of a thing called prompt injection and data exfiltration. So this will be a good one if you're a CISO, if you're in charge of compliance, if you're in charge of governance in your organization. I'm going to walk you through that so that you've got the information at hand when you're speaking to the rest of your team. But 1 week further out from that, and let me just go to the Kowalah website and resources and Wednesday webinars. And let me go to 2 weeks out, Granola for enterprise teams. We are really excited that in 2 weeks we've got a joint webinar with the team from Granola. If you've not used Granola, it is in Kowalah, our could not live without AI tool. It transcribes the notes from all of the calls and the meetings that you're in and puts them into really nice, digestible formats. And they are then available for you to use in your Claude, your ChatGPT, wherever you want. We use Granola in every single external meeting and every single internal meeting, whether it's one-to-ones, product reviews, things like that. And it becomes this institutional knowledge across the organization. And it means that when we're onboarding a new client, it means that when we're launching a campaign, it means when we're doing a review, we've got all of this knowledge already captured. And as a leader at Kowalah, I'm almost sort of frustrated if the notes aren't being taken by Granola, the meeting shouldn't happen. Like there's no point people meeting and doodling things in a book anymore. Anyway, more of that coming up in 2 weeks' time. We'll be joined by Nick, who heads up customer success at Granola. I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you very much. Another fast-paced Kowalah Wednesday webinar. We will see you next week, 3 p.m. UK time, 10 a.m. Eastern, 29th, and we'll be talking about that prompt injection. I'll see you then.